Okay, Most Fearful Sacrifice, take 2. I've pushed on the game for a while. I think I mentioned I wanted to get to day 2 with the arrival of Longstreet's First Corps, which is happening this turn. It's 8 AM on the 2nd of July. Pretty eventful first day. It's been a bit of a learning curve, getting used to the system. Plays great solitaire, like I mentioned before, with the draw deck, which doesn't take long to put together. Most of the choices you get to pick 2 events, unless you're committing extra artillery barrages, but essentially you get to choose 2 of the 15 and then you draw another 6 in this scenario. And you add those to the formation activation cards and a fog of war and a friction of war card. I think a second one of those gets added during the 2nd of July. So I've learnt a few lessons. I think I probably tried to defend a bit too far north with the Union. They're looking a bit exposed, and they've definitely taken a lot more losses than the Confederates. But attacking, can be quite tricky. There's lots of artillery on the Union side, and sometimes you've just got to grit your teeth and commit your troops before all of the northern troops arrive. And they have been coming up this main road, and there's still more to come. But the rules are pretty clear. There was a bit of confusion on the orders I mentioned last time, but I'm using the previously mentioned house rule that if you choose the manoeuvre order, you can use the road march, and if you choose the attack order, you just get your 5 movement points. That seems to work fairly comfortably. There was a stacking clarification. Struck me as being a bit weird that if you get shaken, you lose essentially a strength point and a point off your cohesion rating, which sometimes could actually benefit you. Say, for example, you're allowed to have 10 stacking points on a road, and you can still use the road march move. So if you had for argument's sake, two 6s, and the first 6 moves in, or the 6 is on the road and the next 6 comes along, then that can't use the road march because you're exceeding the 12 stacking limit. However, if both units were shaken, they've got 1 less strength point, so they're 5 each, so you could use the row stacking order, which seems a bit strange, doesn't it? You're getting a benefit from being disrupted or shaken, but actually the rule is, there was a clarification, it's not in the errata, but it's the printed value which counts, which makes a lot more sense. So 6 would apply whether you're shaken or not, and there's a few other cases when that's important. So essentially you shouldn't ever get any benefit from being shaken. And the only other rule I had a bit of problem with was the lanes that go between hexes. There's a hex side, and I'll show you on a map in a minute, and I wasn't quite sure how to handle those, because if your last bit of movement is actually on that lane hex side, then you actually have to commit to the counter going into one of the adjacent hexes, which may mean that you've actually gone up a slope hex, although you're on the lane. Just a bit weird, but anyway, we'll have a look at that in a minute. Who's winning? Don't know. Lots of VP hexes still under the control of the Union, but the loss ratio was massively in favour of the South, so probably going the south way. I think I would have played more differently as the north next time than the south. But it's been a good session to dust off the rules, make a few notes. I tend to do a few scribblings and I add to the printed off errata things to rules just to clarify my own mind. There seem to be more of them as you get older. But yeah, looking forward to Chickamauga, which I believe is the next one to come out. So let's have a look at the map. Okay, so Gettysburg here. You'll notice that the positions which were held by the North up here, I mean there's a VP air hex here, and I don't really think it's worthwhile the Union's trying to commit to hold this area. I was a bit overextended there. Another thing I got wrong last time was that I mentioned about Heath Division being very ineffective because it's because Heath was killed, and you get the -2 on the division roll. That isn't the case. If Heath is, as you see, he's a poor commander, you don't get the -2, you just forfeit 2 victory points. So they've still got a 5 and 6 chance of doing something, which I'm much happier with that. So I think I only missed out on 1, possibly 2 turns of that, so nothing too substantial. So you can see the position here. You've got this little area of Union troops which look to be sandwiched between the Confederacy here and elements of that's Early's division have actually got into Gettysburg, but equally they're a little bit trapped between this area of Union forces and these guys. This is the Iron Brigade, who have been holding out very well, pushing back anything which approaches their position. Sort of Rhodes division here, Heath is here, and then we've got Anderson and Pender. So there's the squeezing, and the Union are feeding troops in up the road, right from over here, coming up the road, trying to bolster this collapsing position. These are actually Union troops, so I think this is Seminary Ridge, which is held by the Union. The hasty works markers are the same colour as the Confederate troops. Maybe it'd be nice to have some blue ones just to be a little bit clearer as to who is where. But the Confederate troops have actually forced the Union off this ridge line, and they're now getting artillery in position. You can't move within 2 of the enemy, so you've got to wait until you've cleared a bit of space to allow you to bring your artillery forward and deploy. But at the moment they're not committing to getting extra barrages. They want to get Claw's division, who is coming on here. So this is the vanguard of Longstreet's First Corps, who will probably come along and detour this way because it's getting a bit congested up here. So I've selected the fast courier and the redeployment cards with a view to really pushing this division as far as we can. Managed to get through the first night, so all the bivouac rules seem to make sense, so that was fine, and we're just waiting to see how day 2 unfolds. So I'm probably going to push on at least for the morning of the second day, see what happens when I think Hood's division actually arrives next turn as well, so there'll be quite a lot of southern troops coming down this way, starting to push across, maybe to, don't know whether they're going to get to Little Top and or Little Round Top and Big Round Top, but don't know. It's been a very interesting game learning about the arrival of the various troops and where they come on the map, so it'd be good to have that in mind for any kind of face-to-face play in the future. So there you go. Little addition to that video. I did say in the beginning I was going to talk about these hexside lanes. So this is the example. And you're coming on from the map with the bulk of the Confederate troops, and you'll see these lanes that come up. And unlike the main roads that clearly go from hex to hex, you've got one here, for example, and another one here, which go between the two hexes. Now that's kind of okay for this one because the lane's only going to cost you 1 anyway, so if you go from here and if you were to stop here, you could select either of these two and it's only going to cost you 1 anyway because it's clear terrain. But with this one, if for example your last hex of movement was actually on the hex side, you'd have to pick one of these two. Well, you've actually gone up a slope. So to move from there to there would actually cost you 2. But because you're going along the lane, and if you happen to end there, you'd be selecting one of those two, and you'd actually really only be paying 1 to move into it. I think that's how. I think it's just a slight anomaly of the map terrain design. But I think the ruling was that you just get to pick. So if you were here and you had another 4 movement points, you would just go 1, 2, 3, and then 4, and you just choose one of those two. So you're only really paying for the slope if you're entering from a hex which isn't on the lane side. It's a little bit weird. I could read it one or two ways. That, you know, if you had 2 movement points here left, you would just go 1, 2 and end here. But if you had 1 left, then maybe you couldn't end there, which is a bit weird, isn't it? So I think it's a compromise solution, and you just say, well, we're going to pick one of these 2 hexes and only pay 1 for it. So that was that's what I forgot to mention in the first. So I was just adding this on at the end of the main video.